Okay, so we're now published on YouTube. It's 7 p.m. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Good evening, everyone. This is our first live streamed final for our first online tournament of the year. All of these competitors pre-recorded their speeches. So Judge Dandridge is going to be moving from speech to speech, checking in with Judges Lipkin and Banto in between speeches to make sure that they are ready. But we are really excited to show you the 5 best varsity oratory speakers for our first tournament of the year. Thank you all for watching. And I'm going to leave the Zoom and let the judges get underway. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you. All right, with that being said, if everyone's ready, I'll start the first video.
Ready.
All set.
Hello, I'm Jasmine Pettit, and today my speech is called New to You, Tiring to Us. If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. That was once said by a black activist, Desmond Tutu. If an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse and you say you are neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality. Well, African Americans are the mouse trapped underneath the elephant-sized broken system. America, as we know it, has made slavery illegal, yet has found loopholes to cause inequality and suppress the black man due to the skin on his back. Racism.org gives the history and understanding of how our government continues to suppress the black man and mask it as things take time. But it's been over 100 years of oppression. Isn't that enough? In order for America to fully say that being African American is not the short end of the stick in the eyes of the law, and systems are not unjust, they must change the systematic racism that brings down a group of Americans in their society. In this speech, I will give background, history, facts, and an overall view on how our government is still trying to uphold what the slave owners attempted to do with the Black Code. And finally, what we can do as a society if we would open our eyes and create the change we want to see in the world. I'd like to start off with some history. Systematic racism in your legal system is just a loophole in the unjust ways of slavery. In 1863, the 13th Amendment was passed, making slavery unconstitutional with the absolute expectation that slavery as punishment for a crime, where a specific party will be duly convicted. Yet the badges of slavery and bondage are still lingering all the way into the 21st century. All because of the fact that African American males' constitutional rights are being marginalized and abridged. Along with the fact that the 15th Amendment was in place to manifest and ensure that newly freed slaves have the right to vote. Sadly, black men are still systematically denied the opportunity to vote. Something so simple as a violation of curfew and loitering could give you a felony. Our government has made it so you get a felony, now you're casted away, locked away in the highest tower from society, and we no longer want to hear from you. Another way to cast away the black vote with one hand and with the next go around the 15th Amendment right and say we allow African Americans to vote, not criminals. Yet these alleged criminals are primarily black. I'd like to go into some facts and statistics now. About 475,900 inmates whom were black and 436,500 whom were white, a difference of 39,400. This statistic is of inmates whom have spent over 1 year in jail. Now let's go down the long road, shall we? In 2017, blacks represented 12% of the U.S. adult population, yet 33% of them are sentenced in prison populations, whereas whites account for 64% of U.S. adults, but only 30% of prisoners, showing the demographic of white to black imprisonment ratio. There are more white people in America, yet there are more black people locked away in prison. And it's not because black people are so bad they just can't help but create crime and wreak havoc. No. It's because the system was never built to make the black soul succeed. It was built to struggle. Slavery, by another name, stated that, under laws enacted specifically to intimidate blacks, tens of thousands of African Americans were arbitrarily arrested, hit with outrageous fines, and charged for a cost of their own arrest. With no means to pay these obstinable debts, prisoners were sold and forced labors to coal mines, lumber camps, brickyards, railroads, quarries, and farm plantations. Thousands of other African Americans were simply seized by Southern landowners and compelled into years of involuntary servitude. Government officials least falsely imprisoned blacks to small-town entrepreneurs, provincial farmers, and dozens of corporations, including the U.S. Steel, looking for cheap and abundant laborers. Armies of free black men labored without compensation, were repeatedly bought and sold, and were forced through beatings and physical torture due to the bidding of white masters for decades after official abolition of American slavery. How does that connect today, you ask? Well, offenders are charged a supervision fee that is supposed to create some type of division expense. The cost per inmate is $17.11, which does include utilities. So let's do some quick math, shall we? 17.11 times 365 days. Let's see. Carry the one. Yeah, that equals $6,245.15. Yep, seems about right. Right off the bat, after 1 year in prison, they are already $6,245.15 in debt. Let's not even get into the fact that minorities are prosecuted harsher and 1 year of punishment is rare due to the systematic racism in our courts. But let's continue down this broken cycle. Who's gonna hire a convicted felon? Nope. Yeah, I didn't think so. Well, moving forward, I have a story. A young man was walking home from a convenience store. Later, he was confronted by 3 police officers because he had received a 911 call saying that there was a man walking down the street with a ski mask. Let me remind you, it is not illegal to walk down the street wearing a ski mask. He later says, "I'm an introvert. Please respect the boundaries I am speaking." Later, he gets wrestled by an officer because the young man tries to turn off his music in order to hear the officers better. Officers told him they were going to literally bring a dog and bite him if he quote-unquote did not stop messing around, later putting him in a crowded hold, which restricted the blood flow to his brain. He then throws up crying and pleading and yelling for help and pleading for his life. He later died after the abuse of police caused him and the neglect paramedics did to his life by essentially overdosing him with ketamine. What happened to the officers? Nothing. They got fired, but no one is serving time. This happened 1 year ago. Well, there's another scenario. A man got sent to prison for 8 life counts because allegedly a man died from a beating during a burglary. The man that got arrested didn't get manslaughter. No, he went to court for a capital offense. He went to a court for a jury to decide if he should receive the death penalty. He was charged with possession of a deadly weapon, murder, first-degree arson, and grand larceny auto. Yet there was no DNA, no fingerprints on the gun, no camera footage, and there was only one witness. A young female who was on crack at the time, an unreliable witness, who sold her words for freedom. She said he was there, but she already hated him because he had previously broke her heart. Well, he didn't get killed by the death penalty only because his 6-year-old daughter's testimony. She bawled in front of the jury at the thought that her father was going to be gone and it would be all their fault. Her heart dropped, so young yet so sick at the thought of losing her father. Yet not fully understanding exactly what would happen to him, all she knew was that she would never be able to see him again if the court decided. Luckily, he's alive. How do I know all of this? It was a scenario. It was my life. I am the 6-year-old daughter whose testimony saved her father's life. But it's not only my father has to deal with this systematic racism. No. And my father is one of many thousands. But going back to my first story, It wasn't a story. A black man was killed by 3 officers and a neglecting paramedic, and the officers, well, they were white and are walking free. They have actual footage of them killing him, yet walk free. Because our systematic, and his name was Elijah McClain. Because our system protects them and is created against the black man, we must fix the broken system in order to create a safe society, in order to fully say that America has freedom, equality, and in order to be proud of America, we must band together and create the equality. We must make America great. We need to stand together and create the change we are begging to see. We need equality. We need safety. We need to be proud of the American soil we live on. And that does not happen alone. It happens with you, it happens with me, it happens with all of us together. Thank you for listening.
Give you guys a minute while I switch videos.
I'm ready when you guys are.
Yeah, I'm all set.
Hi,
Just to confirm you guys can see the video.
Yeah, this is AL 100, right? I just want to make sure.
Yeah, I can see it, and yeah, yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's AL 100.
I was just double checking. Thank you, gentlemen.
Hi, my name is Fahim Kamal, and the title of my oratory is Bad Drivers. You're late. You're never late. Go to bed at 9, wake up at 6, get to work at 7. Go to bed at 9, wake up at 6, and get to work at 7. Today you woke up at 7. And to top it all off, today was not any other day. Today was the day of your presentation, the one that might finally land you that big promotion. You rush out of the house, get into your car, and start your morning commute when a huge white Honda Civic comes by and cuts you off. As a result, you're late to your presentation. In a fit of outrage, you curse and plead that that driver must be the worst driver that you've ever seen. In reality, it turns out that the driver of the white Honda Civic was just an expecting father with his pregnant wife going to the hospital. And now you're the jerk who mouthed off at an honest man who was just at the wrong place and at the wrong time. Chance occurrence, right? No. You see, this experience is emblematic of one that we have all experienced. You see, we've all blamed bad driving on the bad drivers. We've all accredited personality with behavior. We've all committed the fundamental attribution error. Saul McLeod, a researcher at the University of Manchester, indicates that the fundamental attribution error is the tendency to overemphasize dispositional or personality-based explanations of behaviors observed in others while underemphasizing situational ones. Today, we'll first understand the reasons why we commit the fundamental attribution error. Second, we'll understand how the fundamental attribution error impacts us on the daily and in the large scheme of things. And lastly, we'll understand what we can do to mitigate the consequences of committing the fundamental attribution error. Humans are innately complex, and so when we try to answer the question of why we commit the fundamental attribution error, we see that there are many reasons. According to the Design Lab, a behavioral design think tank, the fundamental attribution error occurs because our brains try to expend the least amount of energy for a given task. You see, our brain tries to take cognitive shortcuts. When we try to attempt to analyze a given behavior, we do so in a three-tiered system. First, we try to categorize said behavior and understand what is happening. Second, we try to make dispositional characterizations that might be implied from said behavior. And lastly, we try to see how the situation may affect our explanations for why the behavior occurred. This process is largely automatic for the first two steps, and here's where the problem comes in. The third step requires largely effortful processing and is a conscious step that we may not always have the opportunity to commit. Our brain has limited cognitive resources, and when we're strapped for them in the bustle and hustle that is the real world, we're left failing to achieve the third stage. This can happen when we're lacking focus or when we simply don't have enough time. Another thing that may influence our ability to commit the fundamental attribution error is our moods. The Design Lab also cites the Jones and Harris Fidel Castro experiment to conclude that when we're in good moods, we're more likely to commit the fundamental attribution error. The study finds that when we're in a bad mood, we're more vigilant in our processing and take more account of how the circumstances may affect the behavior. On the other hand, when we're in good moods, we fail to understand this and are careless in our thought process and never achieve the third step. Additionally, the fundamental attribution error also occurs when we believe a behavior is highly diagnostic for a specific personality trait. Studies show that people think that highly immoral behaviors are highly indicative of highly immoral personalities. Consider the following example. A food vendor is robbed by a man. The mainstream logic would be to assume that the man did not rob the vendor because he was poor or lacking opportunity, that he did because he was a criminal. The impacts of the fundamental distribution error are vast and undergird many problems of society today, both on a macro and micro level. On a smaller level, we can start to see how the fundamental attribution error inhibits our ability for compassion and empathy. Giving power to dispositional explanations form false conceptions about people, blurring our identity of who they are and who they will be. In our example, the bad driving was not caused by a bad driver, but simply the resolve a husband feels towards his wife and her needs. Zooming out of this particular situation, we can start to see how the fundamental attribution error affects us systemically. Our emphasis and use of the fundamental attribution error sustain regimes that are inherently violent. The criminal justice system, for example, uses this heuristic as a means of legitimization. The criminal justice system focuses on the individual, and in that process, we miss how the larger structures of discrimination and lack of opportunity lead to negative outcomes. Now, all hope is not lost. Although the fundamental attribution error is worrying, we have the ability to overcome it. First, we must overcome the power we give to disposition. We can start this process by giving people the benefit of the doubt, understanding and communicating that we don't have the bigger picture. Second, we can also start an iterative process of reflection in which we understand how we categorize someone else's behavior in its linkage between personality and situation. When doing so, we can hope to open a cognitive pathway that allows us to get to the third tier of our system, and allow us to understand how situations may be powerful in affecting our behavior. Lastly, we need to start practicing empathy. Start communicating feelings and being there for the people who are in your life. In time, we hope that this perspective will gain emotional intelligence that will help us cut back against the fundamental attribution error. This brings us back to our main point. Is bad driving caused by bad drivers? You see, at the beginning of this speech, you may have said yes, obviously. But towards at the end, you may now start to realize how the fundamental attribution error really shifts that up and makes us realize that there is no definite answer to this question. Yes, bad drivers cause bad driving, but bad circumstances do as well. As you ponder throughout the day, I implore you to understand this instinctive bias inbuilt into your psychology and wonder what power you give to disposition. Thank you.
Judges ready?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Online hate speech. The United States is a country founded on certain unalienable rights that set us apart from other countries, and American citizens take great pride in the rights they have. Our First Amendment right grants us freedom of speech. However, some people abuse their rights and intentionally try to offend and hurt others. This is evident through the hate speech that is apparent in our society. With the emergence of social media sites, hate speech has become more prominent. Consequently, social media negatively influences the modern way in which hate speech is spread. Today, we will understand what hate speech is, how social media influences hate, and solutions to reduce online hate speech. Hate speech is defined as offensive and abusive speech used to attack a certain group of people on the basis of race, sex, or religion, and it is currently upheld as a fundamental right under the First Amendment. According to attorney and constitutional law expert Floyd Abrams, hate speech is seen essentially as a price society must pay in order to maintain true freedom of speech. While hate speech was definitely apparent in the last century, over the past few decades it has adopted a new form. Unfortunately, in the 2000s, with the new rise of social media and the internet, hate made its way to these sites and created what we now know as online hate speech. Unlike the early internet, where internet postings could only be published by journalists, social media users have the ability to post, edit, share information, and contribute their own opinions and ideas to the public. According to Tiana Gilishvili, a law expert from Lund University, social media provided the perfect venue to promote ideas and free-thinking ideology. Edward Kessler, fellow of St. Edmund's College, Cambridge, supports Gilishvili and states it similarly. Everyone is a publisher and everyone is a critic. Unfortunately, in facilitating the spread of ideas and opinions, social media created the perfect instrument through which hate could be spread. With the introduction of social media, hateful individuals were just a click away from one another, and communication was faster and more efficient. Additionally, because social media allows you to interact with like-minded people, those who are spreading hate often feel empowered. Kessler finds that social media reinforces pack identity and mob rule. People are more inclined to spread hate because they know that there are people who will support them. Moreover, another main reason social media is used to spread hate is because it offers anonymity. When someone's identity is concealed online, they are more comfortable with doing and saying things they would not normally. Because of this newfound efficiency and empowerment, the number of hate groups has increased significantly. Consequently, what scholars call a global racist subculture has developed. The Southern Poverty Law Center, an organization that monitors hate and extremist groups throughout the United States, supported this term with their findings. As of 2000, there were only 599 hate groups in America. However, in 2018, there were 1,020 active hate groups on social media sites. With the rise of social media platforms, hate groups have become more numerous. Sadly, online hate speech is plaguing our society and it must be solved. Not only does hate speech cause emotional and psychological harm to victims, but it also promotes physical violence and hate crimes. According to Edward Kessler, hate speech creates a precondition for a hate crime. This is why hate crimes are so prevalent in society today. Moreover, according to Jeremy Waldron, a legal philosopher, there are two messages that are spread through hate speech. First, hate ideologists aim their message at the victim. They try to insult and dehumanize the victim so that they feel like they do not belong. Second, those who spread hate aim their message at the community. They want to encourage and persuade others to see the victims of hate as inhumane and unfit for society. This harms society because people can become less tolerant of others. In an effort to stop the spread of online hate propaganda, many entities have decided to take action. One solution is for social media sites to regulate hate on their platforms. Most social media sites already have policies in place and they remove posts and comments that violate these rules. While this solution has been beneficial and there have been a number of hate postings removed, which means less hate present on the internet, it has its limitations. Unfortunately, sometimes these hate policies are not fairly implemented and they do not protect everyone. For instance, Facebook uses an algorithm to filter hate and defines hate speech as an attack against a protected group, which includes race and sex. However, if the protected group is mixed with the unprotected group, which includes age and social class, they do not get protection. We can see this when Facebook finds the term white men as a protected category, but black children as a non-protected category, meaning that an attack against black children would not be removed. So while many social media sites do limit hate through regulation, it is up to them to determine what is hateful and what should be removed. Because of this, not all hate is removed from these sites. Another proposed solution is to ban hate speech altogether. Many colleges have implemented this solution in order to limit the amount of hate on campus. While this ban on hate speech has led to a decrease in hate and hate tolerance, many feel that any restriction to our freedom is a threat to the entire fabric of our constitutional rights. People would rather keep the First Amendment in its entirety because our rights protect us from tyranny. This is a valid concern. If we limit some of our freedoms, we may be closer to becoming the society our founding fathers feared. Is that a risk our society is willing to take? Both sides have strong opinions, and this polarization has made a solution difficult to find. In sum, while many argue that social media does not enable the spreading of hate, this opposite is apparent. Social media negatively influences the way hate is spread. While social media makes communication more efficient and promotes the spreading of ideas, unfortunately, many feel these qualities make it the perfect tool for spreading hate. Because of this, the victims are harmed and our society is negatively affected. We must take immediate action in order to solve this problem, in order to create a better tomorrow. Thank you.
There's one.
Are my judges ready?
Yes, sir.
Yes, absolutely.
If there's one thing the internet has proven over quarantine, it's that maybe not everyone should have access to the internet. Seriously, I don't know about everyone else, but so far I've seen actor Jesse Williams struggling to stay relevant as he helps a fan through a home invasion on Instagram Live. Meanwhile, Grimes and Elon Musk started Twitter beef over what plane they named their human child after. And I witnessed a woman make a casual TikTok while she was in the middle of giving birth. For better or for worse, as we barrel further into the 21st century, the internet has shown itself to be a powerful tool that gives us access to previously unknown information, and gives the unknown access to the benefit of virality. Most importantly, though, the act of activism has become exponentially easier as a result of social media. With the use of social media, we can spread information about an explosion that happens in a country over 7,000 miles away, or share key resources to sign petitions and donate for Black Lives Matter. With all we can manage with social media, one crucial question still remains. That is, do we actually stop to think about both our intentions and the consequences behind each post? Truthfully, every retweet, post, and story has an audience, and a level of awareness of this pressure is needed to productively change the world around us. So today, we'll be scrolling into how effective internet slacktivism can be, looking through our memories at some old philosophy on how the medium is the message, and finally, we'll load the full picture on mindfulness and our social media presence. On January 25th, 2011, it was countless Egyptian protesters who filled the streets of Cairo and raged and assertive to protest the oppressive regime of Hosni Mubarak. In May of this year, it was Americans across the country filling our cities with chants for progress and refusing to waver the song of change. Both of these protests and multiple others share the same nature that has revolutionized the way we think of revolution. The most recent protests in world history have been organized through a decentralized form of authority, whose voices were echoed by social media users across the globe. It's these same users, the people who always manage to repost, retweet, like, and share activist posts, who the University of Pennsylvania describes as slacktivists. In fact, slacktivism, as according to scientific journal PLOS1 in November of 2015, is, quote, users and online protest networks who may be as important in expanding the reach of messages as the highly committed minority at their core, end quote. The truth is, these peripheral activists who possess audiences in numbers small and large aid the message of original leaders of social movements, which encourages more to mobilize and turn their words into legislation. Consequently, in the weeks following George Floyd's death, no one could precisely pinpoint a true leader or organization who was making these protests. As the New York Times reports, the decentralized nature of protests with different figures popping up to lead crowds day after day around the city has given the uprising unusual stamina, end quote. This level of unrelenting energy has been crucial in gaining national attention and accurately raising awareness on the police brutality that minorities disproportionately suffer from. With this newfound power humanity has discovered, though, comes an unprecedented level of social responsibility. Although it's easier now more than ever to garner recognition for problems that go unseen, there's a fine line to walk before people become normalized to the violence. The future will be an electrically computerized dossier bank, that one big gossip column that is unforgiving, unforgetful, and from which there is no redemption, no erasure of early mistakes. Marshall McLuhan. In his 1967 book titled The Medium is the Massage, cleverly titled through a misspell that made its way to publication, Canadian philosopher Marshall McLuhan makes the claim that the medium itself is a message, that the way and form with which we communicate holds just as much value as what we say. In our modern age, this statement has made itself irrefutably clear. The act of slacktivism, including
right now.
posting
I'm sorry.
videos, images, and documents,
I'm judging.
expose corruption and negligence committed by the government. Yet, the more we expose to society, the more painfully clear it has become that people are being desensitized to this information. For instance, the Wisconsin Coalition Against Sexual Violence says by the time that the average teen is just 8 2019, they have witnessed 200,000 acts of violence and 16,000 murders. This means that as we watch another video of an unarmed Black American being shot and killed by the police, the more we eventually accept reality just as it is. Over time on the internet has grown a mass of video evidence of police brutality and other hate crimes, without any form of action civilians can take to change this fact. Humanity is watching these inhumane crimes through a looking glass that no one can penetrate. We're at the receiving end of a tunnel of knowledge, and all that's been accomplished is the commodification of the pain and trauma of generational oppression of people of color in America. As we make trending hashtags, messages, and posts that highlight stories that live and die on the internet. While it could be argued that progress has been made with the officers involved in the cases of George Floyd and the case of George Floyd facing charges, with the House passing a bill on reform, and with people becoming more aware, all of these things are only the beginning. The killers of Breonna Taylor still haven't been arrested. The officers who shot Jacob Blake still haven't been held accountable, and any bill that shows constructive change isn't expected to make it beyond the House. Even more than that, all of these injustices are being drowned out by black screen pictures that say nothing, performative wins that paint over streets still stained with the blood of deaths still unavenged. And all of this has accumulated in the trivialization of the consequential problem of the government of the free, killing its own innocent citizens. In recent months, there have been many people who have accused Black Lives Matter and other mantras as simply just being hashtags, something that will gain attraction around election cycles and then eventually fade into obscurity, along with every other TikTok dance or Twitter meme. In some respect, these people are correct. Every time there is a video of an unarmed American citizen being shot or brutalized by law enforcement, we spread it like wildfire with little regard for the charred remains of what still needs to be done. As we've seen here today, the medium is the message. But what happens when we treat the means of mobilizing with just as much respect or dignity as we would anything else on the internet? What happens when we repeat the same words, see the same video, or have the same arguments without these subtle figments actually becoming law? We know that choosing to stay ignorant is settling for complacency, but what if settling for reality is just as bad? We are so blatantly comfortable in settling for just spreading the word, for just signing a petition, for just reposting, that now we've simplified the act of speaking up for those silenced into just being a trend. That's why we need to take our activism beyond the screen as well. Instead of just posting, more Americans need to be protesting, to take initiative and vote, to call and email the right politicians, and to start having those uncomfortable conversations we used to just brush under the rug. Just because we are naturally capable of forgiving doesn't mean we've earned the privilege to forget. The only way we'll ever dismantle the wrongs of the status quo is if we reach those who benefit from never being uncomfortable, without becoming comfortable with tyranny ourselves.
Let me know when you guys are ready.
All set.
Yep, ready to go.
Today, I would like to talk to you about a problem I have seen throughout my life and something that has confused me for a long time: the normalization of racism against Asians in America. I'd like to first talk to you about life as an Asian American and the struggles we face. Second, I will lead you down a street showcasing Asian American history and its impacts in America. Finally, I will be going over modern day problems and how we should go about them. First off, as you can tell, I am an Asian American, and I've struggled with my cultural identity for a very long time. In elementary, my sister and I were the only Asians in our entire school. We were often greeted with eyes being pulled back, weird looks when we would pull out our food during lunch, and being stared at when an Asian country was brought up in class. According to nces.ed.gov, only 5 to 7% of students in public schools here in America are Asian. For several reasons, this has made an impact on the views of Asian Americans made by their peers. 1. The belief that we are incredibly gifted in math and every other subject besides driver's ed, of course. Upon the small joke of course they got the best score, they're Asian, we see things such as, how can they drive with those eyes? Although they seem like small comments, they tend to build anxiety in our Asian students, trying to reach the standard of their fellow classmates. According to American Psychological Associations, only 18% of Asian Americans report the bullying they receive. But as a counter to that, Asians receive the most bullying due to their race, followed by African American, Latinos, then white victims. Small jokes made about Asians are often overlooked because we do not pay close enough attention. The slurs such as chink, ching chong, and literally any name of any Asian actor or actress makes an impact. You heard the word chink just a few moments ago, and I want to show you the history behind it. An article from history.com shows us exactly where this came from. In January of 1865, white people believed that the Chinese were capable of building railroads. They started off hiring 50, then 50 more, and 50 more, and so on. They worked under the whites who were reluctant to do such hazardous work. The former California governor told Congress that without them, it would be impossible to complete the western portion of this great national enterprise. The job included everything from unskilled labor, blacksmithing, into tunneling. But they only ever received $26 a month for working 6 days a week. To make matters worse, they received a nickname for the job they had. They were called chinks, to make fun of the sound of their tools banging against the railroads they built for all American travelers. But here's something you might not hear about either. Have you ever heard of the internment of Japanese Americans? If you only have a brief memory of it, allow me to remind you of the deep-rooted racism in America. Another article from history.com tells us a lot about this incident. From 1942 to 1945, there was a policy from the US government saying that all Japanese descent would be interned in isolated camps. It was a reaction to Pearl Harbor and the war that was all around us. These camps were considered to be the most atrocious violation of American civil rights in the 20th century. We only ever had 10-minute lessons on both of these in history class combined. America works hard to deny any racist acts against our Asian heritage, and practically erases it from our history classes and books, allowing leeway for just about anyone to poke fun at us. But it doesn't just stop there. Following the COVID-19 pandemic, many of us Asians were under attack for the problem we didn't even cause. There are many things that played a role in the start of the pandemic, but we Asians took some of the hardest hits. Things started off with a few racist jokes and then led to full-on beatings of innocent people because they were Asian. Yet barely none of this was covered by the news. According to bbcnews.com, from March to May 2020, there were over 1,700 cases of discrimination towards Asians due to COVID-19. But this isn't the only problem we have faced. One thing that hit social media platforms was the fox eye trend. Many celebrities such as Emma Chamberlain, Kendall Jenner, and Bella Hadid took part in this. They were pulling back their eyes while taking photos for everyone to see, something that was once considered mockery towards us. Asian Americans took over social media extremely angry that something that made them ugly only a few years ago was being glorified by white Americans. This is something that Asians have been mocked for as long as I can remember. Even as a little kid, I ran into people pulling eyes back at me. Now, something deemed beautiful by white Americans is acceptable. These celebrities received an immense amount of backlash for the cultural appropriation and never really sent out any apologies. This is what I meant by my earlier points. saying that the leeway to make fun of us is immense. So how do we deal with these problems? 1. We start to listen to the things we say. Just because you aren't called out for being blatantly racist doesn't mean to continue it. The small comments build up and open a door to potentially deadly methods of harassment. If you hear someone make a comment about an Asian that just doesn't sit right with you, say something. We are in the middle of another civil rights movement, and we need to step up while others are being pushed down. 2. We need to start learning more about our American heritage. Not everything in our history books is correct. That has been proven time and time again by all races. Learning to amplify the voices of those who suffered is so important. We have to stop overlooking the trauma we cause Asian Americans. There's no excuse for racism. And if you didn't know what you said was racist, well, you can always learn. Just from this one speech, I'm sure you've learned at least a little more than what you learned in history class. Finally, we need to accept all incidents of bullying and learn what is and isn't okay. We can kickstart the new generation where everyone is welcomed and never feels looked down upon. Now that I've given you a small look into my world, please remember that just because you don't notice the harassment doesn't mean it doesn't happen. Bringing these situations to light is just a small step towards making up for the hate and discrimination towards others. As someone who has lived this out on a daily basis, I encourage you just to learn a little more about the things around you. Boba and anime are a trend right now. Remember where these come from. You can't love a culture and then harass the people for it.
All right, I believe that is the last oratory to watch tonight.
Excellent job, everybody. Great job. If you're here.
Good job, everybody.
Yes,
Very
excellent.
enjoyable. Thank you so much.
With that, guess we'll end it here.
All right, judges. Nice working with you.
You as well.